Easel. This is Pat Windrow speaking once again at Tuesday at 6 o'clock. This is a program about painting and drawing. I've been doing this now for almost 4 years. I hope I have your attention for the next hour or so. We take phone calls. The number is going to be put on the screen in a minute. If you have a question about what I'm doing or what you're doing or anything that might be mystifying you about the business of painting and drawing, do call while I'm here so that I can speak to you directly. I'll make a few announcements during the program about what's happening in the Brookhaven area. To the best of my knowledge, I'm sure I don't have everything covered. And also, we'll talk a little bit about the coming programs. So, with this in mind, that this is also a request evening, I'm going to fulfill a request. Maybe it won't take the whole body of the show to do it. It's for Chris Leffler, a young viewer who has been calling me regularly ever since I began this program, and he asked me last week to do a special thing for him, which is a tiger. He wants it a roaring tiger. Well, it won't be a roaring tiger. It's going to be the study of a tiger's head. Naturally, I don't have a tiger in the studio. I've had to come up with some reference material, because even though I only like to work from life, sometimes the artist is called upon to do something which cannot be done from life, namely inside in a studio the head of a tiger. I also have not been to the zoo lately to do drawings of it, but I brought up some reference material, namely some photographs. So I'm working on a piece of oak tag which is available to everybody. It's the kind of thing that one can buy in the local 5 and 10s and general stationery supply shops. I got this darker color here because the white plays bad tricks on the television screen. It sort of jumps and so on. So we're working on a green background. I'm working with some chalk to lay out my preliminary drawing, and I think I'll just do it also in some diluted water-soluble white so that you can see the way I go about laying out this particular study. So here we go. I may not talk throughout this program, but because maybe there's nothing to really talk about as I'm doing this, but I want you to understand that if you wonder what I'm doing, call me. That's sometimes much more efficient than my simply talking endlessly at you during the program. I'm going to do this large so that it's nicely visible to the audience. I'm using a thin down white paint instead of chalk, which is very hard to see. And I'm finding the center of this particular head. This is, after all, going to be a portrait. So one must try to draw it as efficiently as possible before any painting takes place. There are other programs on the TV that do not involve the need to draw things first. They just sort of hop right in and begin painting. In my opinion, one must draw first before paint is applied. So we're drawing now, and as you can see, I'm finding the center, and I'm placing the eyes. That eye is much too close, so I'm going to try and get that off. Well, I'll have to just replace it a bit. You can see how when I do make an error, I must go back and correct it immediately if I can see it right away. Now, a tiger apparently has got a very wide nose arrangement. That's a characteristic of the animal. and a very massive head, something which has to be studied and remembered, because after all, if it doesn't look like what you're working from, the whole exercise is quite useless. And I'm going to do a minimum of this sketching, and the proportion has got to be as close to correct as possible. Now, tigers do not have big ears. I think maybe I've got them a little bit too large. But we'll correct that as we go along, and let me see how the whole general feeling about this creature works out as I'm doing it. Okay. All right. Well, what I have learned from finding this reference material is that the base color of a tiger is a kind of an orange. I'm going to be using this pie plate here, and water-soluble color. Here is a kind of a rust color with a base of some white and some, deep yellow. Let's see if this is going to be close enough. So here we are. My brush technique can be observed closely. I'm using a wide acrylic brush. My reference material tells me that I have a lot of white space over the eyes, gives this particular tiger a sort of a worried look, albeit that if you were to run into this fellow in the wild, you would be the one to have the worried look, I'm sure.
Draw a grizzly bear for Joe.
Okay, Joe, I understand that Joe has telephoned and has sent a message, rather than to tell me himself, that he would like to have me do a bear. Well, if I have time, and if I have any reference material here in my animal book, I will certainly try to find a moment to draw him a bear. A grizzly, I think is that specifically a grizzly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I did anticipate that some people would take the opportunity to ask me to draw some more animals, so I have a number of animal books up here. Well, I discover as one learns, as you are continually finding out about things that you didn't know till then, that tigers have a very wonderful variety of colors. They're not just the striped creatures that you think they are. The variety is rather remarkable. Going from rusty orange to, well, pinkish yellow. It's really wonderful. And I'm putting a base coat on first so that I can put the stripes on later. I hope that Chris is watching this with great care, because he's apparently tries a lot of very difficult projects, which I'm always glad to see people do. Trying difficult projects is more interesting to me than doing the foolproof, easy ones that are just, you're just sort of able to knock them out. That is not the way one really learns. You have to tackle the difficult ones. Naturally, animals, just as people are symmetrical. So whatever happens on one side, more than likely is going to happen on the other as well. So when you draw the center line, that is going to determine the mirror image of whatever happens from the middle on out to the edges. So that's something good to remember in case you're working with animals front face. When you get into the three-quarter view, it's different. It changes. Phone call. Good. Okay, let's do it. Yes, good evening.
I'm Andras. Andras, I called a little while ago.
Yes, I remember. Andras, how are you?
Well, now that you're using the oak tag instead of that white paper,
Yeah?
I want to know if, like, after you do the grizzly bear or whatever that Joe called about, you could do the white long hair cat.
Oh, yes, I remember, Andras. As a matter of fact, I have a cat right here, and if I have the time, I'll be glad to.
Oh, I also have a few questions. When I'm in school, like, sometimes in my free time, I do a little cartooning.
Yeah?
But I always have trouble putting the characters in the wrong place.
Putting the what in the wrong place?
To keep them from, like, moving.
Putting the what in the wrong place?
The characters in the wrong place.
Oh, yeah. Why do you have trouble putting the characters in the wrong place?
Well, see, I just can't get to, like, well, you know when you watch a cartoon
Yeah?
and the character, and, like, he's in the corner?
Yeah?
Sometimes, like, when I draw it, the corner wouldn't be, like, big enough. The cartoon character wouldn't be as close to the corner as he was in the first picture.
Yeah.
So I want to know how I keep it from doing that.
Well, you see, Andras, what I think you're trying to do is to do a finished drawing immediately. That isn't possible. When you're dealing with something such as a cartoon, you have to do sketches first, and then tracings, and then use the placement will come as you work this up. You cannot be expected to do it right the first and only time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes planning.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, bye.
Is that it? All right. I didn't know that I was going to be that clear that fast. I'll elaborate on it just a little bit. That many times young people, and less than young people, think that they must do it immediately, perfectly, the first time. That is not possible. One has to work it, rework it, erase, and plan it. So that may or may not answer some of the questions, but it's something to be sure that you understand from the beginning that you are not expected to do it properly the first time. Okay, well, we are attempting the portrait of a tiger here, which is going to teach or show a number of things. That things which are bisymmetrical do not have to be traced bisymmetrically. They can be improvised in a improvised. In other words, I am not duplicating exactly both sides. I'm getting very close to it, but I'm kind of trying to make it so that it is not what you might call, well, what is the term? I'm looking for a particular term. An absolutely biological rendering. This is not a photograph. This is supposed to be an interpretation in paint, which means that there is a certain leeway that one must have. If you want a photograph of a tiger, then you must go to the zoo and take the picture. But if you're painting, it is up to you as the creative artist to do some interpreting at the same time. Namely, to go from one color to the other with some interest. You know, you will of course try to keep it as bisymmetrical as possible, but some interesting little things that, well, maybe a departure from an absolutely botanical or an anatomical rendition. So you see now, if he's got that color on one side, he certainly is going to have the same on the other, but I'm not going to worry if it isn't exactly in the right, in the same place on the other side. Because after all, in nature, things do vary also. Okay, let's see what we've got here. As long as I've got light, as you can tell, some light color. Barry Romansky is our director, and he's very good. And he said to me the other day, we have one problem. When you jump from one to the other, from the top to the bottom, we have problem following it. Well, I forgot that for a moment. So I promised to try to recall that technical problem that I caused back there with the cameras, that if I change my mind too suddenly and go from one to the other, it's difficult to follow. So, okay. See, I remembered. But maybe a little late, but I remembered some. Stay in the same place for a reasonable amount of time. Now, this is probably where the tediousness comes, or the technique. To me, it's never tedious. I'm always interested in seeing how I can duplicate texture. Everything from pearls to velvet to tiger fur is interesting to me, and of course, not only does one need technique, but one also needs to have a certain patience. Be willing to stay in one place until you get the desired effect. Ah, yes, we're working up. Okay. As you see, I'm working only in one color. I mean, in many colors, but I haven't introduced any darks yet. I'm about to do that now by using some black and some of this sort of rust color, because I want to give some depth to this ear. As soon as you see the introduction of a darker color, you can see how the depth begins to take place. Because after all, painting is merely an application of dark and light. And inside shadows, there is also texture to be considered. The trouble with working from photographs is that one cannot see inside the shadows. When a photograph is in shadow, that's what it is. It's black. In real life, there is a great deal more than just blackness to a shadow. See if I can get that blended a little bit and make it a little softer. All right, we can jump over to the other ear. I'm using house paint. These are what they call deep tone colors. They are paints that have been used by me in and around my home. As a matter of fact, the rusty colored red one is a barn red paint that I have my house painted. I save all these colors. When you come to the end of a job, I do not throw any paint away. I keep it in a small plastic container because I use them for these things, for these demonstrations, and they are also a good idea to remember that you can, in fact, use these colors for trials and experimentations. I'm not saying that artists can use house paint. As a matter of fact, they have used them over the centuries. Van Gogh, when he was without money, and so did Gauguin, used lesser quality paints. Sometimes the paintings suffer because of this problem, but nevertheless it's a very good experimental and learning tool to work with these colors that are not exorbitantly expensive. All right, now let's see, where are we going? Well, let's see if we can start to... I'm going to now do something with the darks. I'm going to be using some blacks right out of the jar here. You can see I'm using a jar. This is tempera color. I didn't have any house paint in black. But this is now when you begin to need to be observant about your reference material. Fascinating that these stripes do this. I think that I read somewhere that the placement of these stripes make it very difficult to see these creatures when they're in a mottled jungle environment. It's very their colors are as if these animals were dappled with mottled sunshine shining through the dense jungle, which is sort of extraordinary to think that nature has provided them with such a handsome and natural camouflage. But that sounds reasonable to me, that these beautiful stripes make them more difficult to see in the daytime, probably even also at night, because these creatures are as frightened of you as you are of them, possibly even more so. And I believe that if you leave them alone, they are not going to be threatening a good deal of the time. It's when you threaten them that they well, protect themselves. As you can see, it isn't just a question of a bunch of stripes. They change in thickness and they change directions many times. These are apparently the little places that their whiskers grow out of. And I'll put the whiskers in later. Now we've got the need to go around and underneath here. Okay, let me see if I can give it some real shape. Now brush is now sort of dry. Some of this color is left on it, and so it's giving me an opportunity to do something called a dry brush technique, which is a substitute for blending. With these colors that are water soluble and that dry fast, the blending is almost impossible. So one must use a dry brush technique. Let me see if I can get some of those wonderful, really great eyes in here now. Okay, we'll let that dry for just a second, and then we'll get put what I call the spotlight of life inside. What makes us it's the little pinpoint of light that makes things look alive. Oh, it needs to have a little bit of shading so that the eyes are give that look of being deep set. So let me see if I can't get some. Oh, here's my palette. I was wondering what I'd done with my palette. Okay, you see this bright yellow here is underneath this dark arrangement, so it has to be given some shading so that the eyes have some because the eyes are, after all, round, and they have to be, you make sure that you interpret them that way. Isn't it remarkable what one dot will do? Before the dot went in, the eyes were not staring. Now don't go away. I'm going to give you that pinpoint of light. It's just dry enough. And it comes right here underneath the lid, which I think works very nicely. And as long as it worked that well, let's put another one down below to give him really shiny eyes. So with the introduction of the dots, we were able to get some really sort of lifelike effect. This I find is a little bit harsh and a little bit too dark, so a little bit too light. So I'm going to pull some, phone call, okay. Yes, yes, good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to know, do you give lessons?
No, only on this program.
Oh, okay.
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 Anything else?
No.
Okay. Just watch closely. I'm sure you can learn plenty from this program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Yes, I have to always answer in the negative, because if I took the time to teach, I wouldn't have time to paint, and would certainly not have time to do this program. So I'm hoping that that this program can be of some service in that manner. Well, let's see if we can get back to this wonderful pattern of stripes. Let's see, okay. This seems to go around the corner here, and he's got a very rakish looking eyebrow. That's a lovely, lovely pattern. Something which I would never have observed until just this minute. And it does the same thing here. It goes around the corner. Very graceful dark pattern here. And, yeah, this fellow here should be repeated somewhere here, sort of repeated. And then this little funny half moon one can go there. But as you see, if you don't do too much what I would call awning stripes, this is not requiring awning stripes. This requires some interpretive striping on this creature, just because of the need to maintain the texture. I'm using the brush sideways. I'm kind of using a sort of a broom technique. And here's a lovely, wonderful, very mysterious arrangement here. It comes down in this pattern. All right, we have the same kind of thing over here. Now, underneath here, I'm going to put a shadow underneath this head arrangement here. So this is what my reference material tells me to do. Underneath this beard, so that the beard will really stand out brilliantly. If you want something to be bright, you must use something very dark as a contrast. Otherwise, all the brightness can't possibly be put in. So because things are only as bright as they are dark next to it. All right, as you can see, I'm using a base, well, maybe you can't see, but I'm using a base of this rust-colored barn red paint and some black to darken it. And this underneath here is a shadow of the head. Well, let's see if I can't get some more tone in there. Here we are. Nope, that's not dark enough. Here we are. And the darkness can continue way down here. All right, let's see if we can get some. Apparently the light is being caught here on some of this fur. Now, let's see, we've got some pale color here because the body comes down, and then there's going to be another wonderful stripe coming down here. A little yellow here. See, these colors now all of a sudden seem to change. And he gets glamorously white towards the middle of his chest here. Let's see. I feel that this is awfully bright. Let me lower this tone. It's just a little bit too harsh. And the bottom of the nose has got a sort of an interesting pink color to it. It's not as pale as the top, so I'm going to mix a little bit of this with some. Let's see, what have I got here? Oh, let me get some real pink. Here we are. This part of the nose appears to be pink, pinkish. And also wet. And the wetness will be done by applying some pale color up here. And then maybe even just some white as a dot of where it is in fact wet. These are little details which I think most people should be told to pay attention to. Okay, now I'm going to try to give this some nice texture here. Well, I'm going to use this very small brush now. Here, you see this little tiny one right here is what I'm going to be using to do those whiskers. And the whiskers should be done with, well, it's a very characteristic thing of all cats, and especially these big ones, and you have to be very free. If I see if I can probably do it. Yeah, you have to just sort of jump in there and hope for the best, but they're better small than too big. So don't press very hard if you're doing any of these things. Don't press too hard, and just try to, settle for something. Don't go into it like this, and and try to make a straight line. It'll wiggle. It won't be right, and it will be. You will have lost the spontaneity. So just sort of settle for the best. Phones are out. Too bad. Okay. Well, since AT&T's merger, or since well, whatever. The phones are now not working, and that's okay. Because of what? Oh, a prank phone call made them go out. Well, all right. Silly. It's silly people are using prank phone calls. There must be other toys to play with. But anyway, we're having a good time here. We don't have to worry about the prank phone calls. We've gotten some good ones, and I'm going to give you a few announcements now. We've gotten those eyes to shine rather nicely. This particular tiger is for my friend, and if Chris is trying to call, well, I'll understand that if he can't get through, that's okay. Let me make a few announcements, not too many. We only have a few more minutes. Let me stand next to my tiger here and give you some... Wait a minute. Let me get some nice, bright yellow thingamabobs here. Make him really fuzzy. Isn't that nice to be able to make him really fuzzy? Because that's what they are, after all. They're really beautiful creatures. How fortunate that they have been declared an endangered species so that people can't go and kill these beautiful things anymore. I'm not interested in seeing people wear these furs. I think they look better in cloth anyway. was a time when these things were really slaughtered without much concern for whether or not they would ever be able to come back again, and they have. Well, I'm using simple, let me get over here. If I were to get over here, is that still okay? Oh, good, I can get over here. And I can do these in this direction. Direction of holding the brush is very important sometimes, as you can see. So I need to, yeah, I'm working from another direction here. Well, let me just kind of make a couple of announcements and for your general edification and information. In Stony Brook at the university, there is a new show which has opened, and it is a light artist. He is an artist that works with lights. His name is Eric Stoller. Oh, that's a rather handsome tiger, isn't he? Sort of nice. Yes, we're going to have to do something about making this a little bit less flat. It doesn't have any form. Okay. Eric Stoller is a light artist. In other words, he works with lights. He works with thousands of lights, little itty-bitty, the little tiny string lights such as one finds in Christmas trees and in many displays. This man has got a rather extraordinary exhibit at the art gallery at the Fine Arts Center in Stony Brook. Don't miss it if you possibly can. Pay the money, park the car in the parking lot, and do go and see it. You see it in a pitch black room. And it's rotating and, pulsating lights in beautiful forms, something that is very hard to describe, but which is essential that you must see if you possibly can get to it. There is an exhibit at the Gallery North of Beverly Riboli's very sensitive and beautiful pencil drawings. Some of them are watercolors, I believe. And also the museums at Stony Brook have naturally their permanent display of William Sidney Mount's paintings of Long Island and the area, as well as the largest collection of carriages in the country, maybe even in the world. And so those are three things which I think you might be able to find the time to do. I'm not going to be here next week. I'm going down to paint the city of Charleston, South Carolina. It was one of America's first important ports. It's antebellum in architecture, and it's right on the coast, so I should be able to get a lot of nice studies of the harbor and the beaches and some of those fine old plantation houses. Homes, I think one should call them. They are more palaces, I suppose, than anything else. And so this program will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 4 o'clock, unless there's some fantastic event in the sports world. But 4 o'clock is the time that these are rebroadcast on Saturday. The other little piece of advice that I might have is you have until 9 o'clock to go vote in this Democratic primary. If you have forgotten, bolt your dinner and go on down there to the polling place and cast your vote for your favorite candidate in the Democratic primary. So that's a little public service which has almost nothing to do with the arts, except that it's got to do with the political arts, and those are just as valid, I think, as the visual arts. I'll go back to my tiger now, try and soften this, put a few more stripes on him, and if I have time, I will do that white cat for my friend who called earlier. Now you see in the shadow here, there is also the blackness, which is difficult to see maybe on the monitor, but I can see it very clearly on this painting. All right, just a little bit of softening on that beard, because we don't want it to look like it's a cutout. And one would do that. I would do this by putting in a little bit of a darker color to soften the edges of this beard. And I can soften this lower part here too to make it look as though it's going around. Little details which must be attended to if you are a realist painter. If you are merely doing a design for sheets or pillows or whatever, you don't have to worry too much. But if you're doing a portrait of something, you have to be faithful to the subject, whether it's a tiger or your grandmother or yourself. Be faithful to the subject which you are trying to portray. Well, there he is. And I have a feeling that maybe we've dealt enough with this. This is for Chris Leffler. I said that I would give it to him because he's been such a real help to me in this program. First of all, showing the interest and apparently never missing a show, which is the only thing that anyone could hope for from a television audience, never to miss the show. So we have this. As you can see, this is on oak tag. And I'm going to take it off. I prepared this little arrangement up here. Now I'm going to do a pussycat on red, which I think is sort of a nice idea. Let me see if I can lay it out with my small brush that I'm going to put in the white paper and see if I can give you some idea of how I'm going to lay this out. This is, of course, also a cat. Now, a cat has, well, I suppose primarily a rounded head, but actually a cat's face, except the position that I'm using here, is rounded. A cat's face is triangular. And the wonderful thing about the cat, especially when it's a kitten, is that it has huge ears. Okay, we have a phone call. So let me take it. Yes, good evening. Can I help you?
Yes, hello. I'm calling from Mastic, and I just was flicking the channels and I came across your show, and I enjoy it very much.
Thank you.
Really impressed. How often are you on, and how long have you been studying art?
Well, first question, to answer the first question is that I am on every Tuesday at 6 o'clock here on Channel 6, and then the program that I do on Tuesday is rebroadcast on Saturday at 4, in case you missed it or in case it was so fascinating you want to see it again. The other answer to your second question is that I have been painting since I was 7, which is more than 8 years ago. And I am self-taught. I'm a working painter. I paint every day for at least 6 hours, and that's probably very close to 7 days a week.
When you say self-taught, you mean like go to library and read books?
No, I paint. I simply paint. I'm a realist. You see, I work from life, and I simply paint what I see, and I go to museums, of course, and I study other painters. I do not go to libraries very often, but I do go to museums and exhibits, and whenever I'm anywhere, I make sure to go and see the masters. We live close to New York City, and I go to the Metropolitan Museum very often during the year to look at the masters. That's how you become self-taught.
Okay. And one other question on this light show that you were talking about.
Yes.
That's in Stony Brook.
Yes.
Is that during the day, evening, or what?
Yeah, it is open from, 10, I believe, 10 in the morning. You might want to call 246-5000 and find out what times the gallery is open. I do believe it's from 10 to 4. It could be from 12 noon until 4. And then in the evenings, if there is an attraction on the main stage at the Fine Arts Center.
Okay.
But it's a quite remarkable show, and I think that you will have, this is a wonderful opportunity to see it without having to yak into New York and see it and fight all the trains and the traffic and everything. It's right here for you.
Right.
So do go and see it. It's quite wonderful.
Yes, I think I will.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Let's see if we can get this little pussycat done before the show comes to an end. I'm going, as I say, I shan't be on next week, but, 10, good. That gives us plenty of time for this pussycat. The characteristic of young animals is that their ears and their eyes are very large. The older they get, the head, of course, grows large and seems to grow into their size. So the characteristic of baby rabbits is that their ears appear to be much larger when they're babies than when they're adult rabbits. I'm sure that that's so. Same thing with bears and cats. Phone call. Okay. I was about to make some wonderful anatomical remarks about a cat and animals, but let's do it some other time. Oh, yes. Good evening. Can I help you?
Yes, hello, Mrs. Windrow.
Yes.
I need a bit of advice.
Good.
We're working on a project at work. I work at the YMCA.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make a mural.
Yeah.
And I believe it's going to be painted on a vinyl window shade, probably.
Oh, God, yes.
It's probably a panorama of Florida, just for the children and their lessons to enjoy.
Right.
And I'd like to know, what in your opinion, what kind of paint should we use that could stand up to that constant heat and humidity? And also, the thing is going to be rolled up, so it would have to be flexible.
Yeah. My first reaction is, oh dear, when you tell me it's going to be on a vinyl lamp shade.
Yeah.
If there's any way of your being able to talk the art department there into simply letting you do it on heavy brown paper.
No. This
No?
has to be something that can be rolled up out of the way.
You can roll up a piece of heavy brown paper.
Yeah.
Paper folds, rolls.
Yeah.
If you work on plastic, it is a temporary project that is not worth saving.
I see.
It's simply not worth saving. The plastic will deteriorate. The paint that you put on it will fall off. No matter what the paint is, you can use a vinyl paint. Presumably it marries with the vinyl backing, the vinyl shade, but it will not. It will flake off like cornflakes. It'll simply fall off, and all the work that these children will have been put on will have been useless.
Oh,
You'll have nothing to look back on.
I see. Well, the brown paper, will that hold up under all that heat and humidity?
Oh, absolutely. Where is it? What heat and humidity are you talking about?
Well, it's in the swimming pool area.
Oh.
It's tremendous humidity in there.
Oh. Then you ought to use Sanitas. Have you got that word? Sanitas?
Wait a minute. Sanitas?
Sanitas. It is found in wallpaper stores. It is a vinyl-coated cloth, which is substantial enough not to deteriorate, and the paint will not fall off it.
Coated.
Yeah, Sanitas. Sanitas.
Okay. Cloth.
If you use a vinyl base paint,
Use
it will do the job.
Okay, wait a minute. Use a vinyl.
Yeah, it'll do the job. You may want to, when this thing is finished, you may want to put a coating of polyurethane on it.
Okay, wait a minute.
Because you will need to keep the dampness away from it, and some polyurethane probably. Don't spray it on because the fumes that come out of those spray cans are lethal. But you may have to brush some polyurethane over this whole thing. How long is it going to be?
Pardon me?
How many feet is it?
I don't know exactly. It'll be good sized. Apparently it'll be on a shade that would cover a patio door.
Oh, I
Something
see.
large.
Okay, well that's not too large. I thought you were going to go into 25 feet.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not, because I have to do it myself.
Well, a vinyl-based paint, you can find that in the stores, or even an oil-based paint. An oil-based paint would be even more ideal. So use oil-based paint if you can on a piece of Sanitas. I have done murals on that for years.
I see.
And
okay.
they work, and it works.
Good. Okay.
But stay away from a shade. The shade is just...
Not the shade. Okay.
Oh, it's not. No, that's not the stuff to use.
Okay, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
Thank
good.
you very much.
Yeah, because all that effort should at least be preserved.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, let's see if we can get this little white cat to make some sense. Actually, I probably should jump down to the eyes because something without eyes is disturbing. One is not too sure. This will be a little yellow-eyed pussycat, and I'm hoping that the length of the fur will be satisfactory to Ardash, I think his name is. Now, that is obviously just 2 circles. With that, one is going to attempt to make the portrait of a cat. Let me see if I can get the darkness so that the eyes have some life to them. Now, just as we did in the other one, I'm going to put some darkness up here at the top because of the need to make these eyes shine and be three-dimensional. They are not flat plates. They are supposed to be circles. I mean balls, eyeballs. So we have to try and maintain the need to make them look round. 3 minutes. Okay. Well, we'll just continue working and try to. Now here's what we did before with the tiger. We're dealing with felines tonight. One old and already formed and quite finished in the way of an adult tiger, and one little portrait of a small young kitten who has got different proportions, but basically the same kind of a need for this kind of technique. Okay, so we're going to need the little pinpoints of light. I think these things are always useful to people who are attempting to paint and who don't quite know. 2. All right. Well, I'm going to just keep working and talking, and if I run out, that's okay. I've already said good night to some people. Let me just continue to work here and see if I can't get this white cat to be finished for our friend. We have a very short time left. I'll just keep talking to you as I'm doing this. This has been another cable easel program with me, Pat Windrow, trying to give you a few pointers on how to work in this visual arts medium of painting. I hope that it's been helpful to you. Thank you for the calls. Tune in on Saturday if you want to see some more of this. This little cat's ears are much too big. I laid them out much too big, so we'll just enlarge his face and see if we can make the proportion better, if we can sort of correct the proportion. Okay, so as we close the show, and I'll just keep painting, good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. This is Pat Windrow saying good night.